For those of us who have spent years playing fighting games, there are some shared moments we've all definitely run into over time. Grinding out long sets with friends, getting destroyed by input reading AI in arcade mode, and desperately trying to bring your waifu to life are common experiences. But there's another often overlooked piece of the fighting game puzzle that I wish to mention: bonus stages. Found all over the medium, these range from iconic to absurdly bizarre, and I wanted to get to the bottom of all the madness. Today's mission will explain what a bonus stage is, their origin point, why developers include them in their games, and what they look like today. As bonus stages break the mold of exclusively fighting another person or the CPU in a traditional battle, and they even exist outside of fighting games, I thought they would be a fun talking point to extensively cover as a nice break from my usual type of video. Plus, I'm a sucker for punching people's cars and for taking silly concepts seriously, so how could I resist such an enticing topic? Okay, without further ado, let's explore the world of bonus stages. Before we get into the history of bonus stages, we first need to define them. After all, if we don't know what they are, then how are we going to know when we found one? That's what my dad used to tell me about carp when we went fishing, but he died in the war. Anyway, bonus stages are very short and self-contained experiences that provide new ways for players to interact with a title's core mechanics, with the game itself often bringing attention to this fact. They task the audience with using the skills they've learned from prior experience to accomplish different types of goals, and according to Rayman Origins designer Chris McEntee, bonus levels are intrinsically motivating for the achiever in the same way a slap in the face when declaring a duel encourages the challenged to step up and prove himself superior. The level itself is a clear reward, but the emotional thrill, the challenge of beating the level brings with it, is all the more exhilarating to the achiever. An explorer will also be interested simply because it is another area of the game world to discover. In layman's terms, if we're faced with a challenge that feels out of the ordinary, especially one that you have to manually discover, our competitive instincts will kick in, compelling us to demolish the goal with ease. But hang on, if the fundamental game mechanics remain unchanged within bonus stages, how do they provide new gameplay styles? And isn't this definition a bit broad? Well, yes and yes, more on this final part later. The core concept of the player faces adversity, the player wins if they overcome it, or the player loses if they don't, remains entirely the same, but the type of adversity that we as the player face in these bonus stages totally changes. For example, you would never have to worry about falling off the map in Tekken, but Nancy flips this concept on its head. You would never have to strike the screen's corners in Street Fighter, but the first title's bonus stages introduce such a concept. And you'd never have to focus solely on launching a stationary target in Super Smash Bros., but this is exactly what we have to do. The most famous of these within the fighting game genre include Street Fighter's car and barrel crushing and Mortal Kombat's Test Your Might, but they can be found all over the medium. But that brings us to yet another question. Did fighting games invent bonus stages, or were they a result of other genres? In order to answer that, we need to go back to the 1980s. With its colourful aesthetics and dominance over contemporary popular culture, I wouldn't be surprised if you've personally experienced media from this period, especially its old video games. There are so many classics to kill some time with, but what's relevant to our journey involves the very first bonus stage. Doing a quick search on ye olde Google revealed a book titled Arcade Fever, The Fan's Guide to the Golden Age of Video Games, written by John Sellers. Page 63 discusses Rally X, a racing game developed by Namco which released in October 1980, and if you look hard enough you can find the following passage. Rally X's longest lasting omission to the video game ether was its debut of the bonus stage, a signature of later classics like Galaga and Joust. Sellers even reinforces this claim via an info box towards the left of the page. At first, this seems like an open and shut case. We've found the common ancestor of bonus stages, woohoo! Well, not exactly. Like any high school English teacher loves to say, Wikipedia can never be 100% accurate, you should use other sources to verify your claims. So this is exactly what I did, and what I ended up finding disproves the Rally X theory. June 1980 gives us Carnival, a primitive shooter developed by Gremlin Industries, who later went on to be acquired by Sega. Players are tasked with shooting objects that fly downwards across the screen, with the bonus stage making you shoot a bear for extra points. This is all well and good, but the Japanese website Media Arts Database claims that Rally X was first demonstrated publicly in January 1980, citing issue 154 from publication Game Machine as its evidence. I wasn't able to find this source for myself, however, and as it's in Japanese, I would need to machine translate it into English for my filthy gaijin eyes to understand it. Lord knows I appreciate really big and bold English text on Japanese media. Despite Rally X being viewable before Carnival, it ended up being playable after, so I'm giving the win to Carnival on this one. Even when analysing the most primitive of bonus stages, they remain consistent within our definition of providing new experiences with familiar mechanics. These two might differ wildly with their objectives, presentation, difficulty, etc., but they both aim to entertain players with unique spins on their traditional gameplay loops. Going back to the broadness of my definition, couldn't that mean literally any and all sections with different objectives are bonus stages, even in games that don't have level structures? Well, in my view, these would fall under the category of minigames, as their core mechanics are often different from the regular games. Minigames also tend to punish the player for failure, especially if they're required for story progress, whereas bonus stages have no negative impacts on a game's progression. If you lose, the game keeps going as normal. Minigames also possess their own notoriety, with the infamous lockpicking sequences being featured in seemingly hundreds of works over the years. Now that we understand the history and general skeleton of what a bonus stage is, why do developers include them at all? If you ask 10 different people this question, you'll likely receive 10 different answers, but I've thought of a few reasons as to why bonus stages are included in games. The first concerns improvement, as they often force users to sharpen their skills in a controlled environment. Third Strike's parry the ball immediately comes to mind, as while it may seem like a mindless distraction on the surface, it's really a method of getting players comfortable with parrying moving targets. There's a natural rhythm within how you're intended to interact with these projectiles, and if you parry all of them, it feels amazing. Travelling back to 1992's Art of Fighting, there's a bonus stage where players are instructed to practice the motion for their super, and if this isn't meant to be a training regime, then I don't know what is. Going outside of fighting games, 1981's Galaga features iconic bonus stages with enemy ships appearing in fixed patterns. Most people's first instinct will be to go crazy and blast them as fast as possible, but the true road to success requires deliberate movements and firing patterns. By encouraging patient play in the bonus stages, the game itself is subtly teaching you to remain this way in the main levels too. Resident Evil 4's shooting gallery also comes to mind as a tutorial of sorts, with its challenge involving accuracy and scoring, much like Galaga now that I think about it. Despite the lack of chainsaw-wielding villagers, the player can improve their aim without wasting precious ammo, which is a godsend in survival horror titles. An underrated set of bonus stages can be found in 2009's Mad World, as its bloodbath challenges are heavily inspired by classic arcade games. The Turbinator is a great example, as it allows users to become familiar with the title's motion controls and introduces them to wide-scale environmental combat, a major component of moment-to-moment gameplay. The second reason involves variety, as bonus stages often introduce novel styles of gameplay to keep the audience engaged over long periods. Many of these titles would shift into first person to realize such a goal, and Shinobi's target practice always blew me away as a kid. It looked nothing like the base game. Without prior knowledge, a rapid change in perspective can grab your attention, returning your interest to that of when you first started playing. An unexpected switch in objectives keeps players engaged over lengthy intervals, as when done right, they prevent monotony. It doesn't matter how optimal your combos are, if there aren't creative ways to interact with a game's single-player content, it'll eventually become boring. I'm sure we've all played console games where after an explosive first few hours, it starts to feel like you're going through the motions due to its objectives becoming repetitive. Now, I'm not saying that a sudden bonus stage would fix my gripes with the final third of Grand Theft Auto 4, but as arcade games are more concerned with instantly compelling players to put money into the machine, they don't have as much time to sink their teeth into your attention span. If you've ever been to an arcade before, you'll know that there are seemingly endless rows of machines all fighting tooth and nail for your attention, and if one ever becomes tedious, it's dead on arrival. The third reason relates to audience emotions, and this more or less plays off my previous point about long-term entertainment value. There's nothing objectively wrong with a game that has mostly consistent intensity levels, but by lowering and raising these levels over time, the audience experiences a contrast between tension and release, challenge and ease. While not really a bonus level, Outrun 2's Junctions marked the first time I actively noticed such a juxtaposition when I was younger. The intensity of making it to the stage's end is diffused when the road straightens out, as players are given some breathing room before the next course begins. Final Fight's car-crushing bonus stage functions similarly through its space where players can freely strike a target without taking damage. These serve as bonus stages that return the game to a more neutral pacing, congratulating audiences for being skilled enough to make it that far in the first place. Conversely, bonus stages can also be utilized to add intensity, with challenges being reserved for only the best of users. Super Monkey Ball's bonus stages spring to mind, as although these start out simple enough, they end up becoming really hard, playing part in a large-scale rise of difficulty. Sonic the Hedgehog 2's half-pipe stages involve a kindred escalation, except you manually have to opt into these. Finally, and with all the pretentious video essay talking points aside, bonus stages are included because they're good fun. With how simple they are by design, I can't imagine many of them, especially those belonging to more primitive titles, took long to develop, yet they go a long way in maximizing a game's fun factor and memorability. Being able to take a break from the main game and briefly interact with something brand new is always one of the most surprising aspects of these titles, especially when you have to go off the beaten path to find it. World 1-1 in Dying Light and the Minecraft level in Borderlands 2 act as enjoyable diversions for players willing to explore their vast environments, and you can tell that their respective developers had a great time making these. At this point, we've spent a lot of time looking at bonus stages of old, but what about their modern day counterparts? What exactly do bonus stages look like today? The decline of arcades throughout the 2000s led to countless developers switching gears into home console development. I mean, they were always creating home console titles, but there was now an even greater focus on this market. With audiences now having access to powerful hardware in their living room, they no longer had to travel to the arcade to play the most technologically advanced games, allowing studios to provide mind-blowing experiences within the confines of a disc. Fast forward a few decades, and we're still living through this phenomenon. Theoretically, this colossal improvement in technology can only lead to bigger, bolder, and better bonus stages, but when looking at modern original works, they've mostly faded away. Within the fighting game genre, Street Fighter VI is easily carrying the torch as it makes extensive use of these levels in its arcade and story modes. Art of Fighting's training regimen lives on via World Tour's food activities, as these teach new players how to effectively perform motion inputs. For those who wish to look elsewhere, you might not like what you find, as other popular fighting games neglect these stages almost entirely. From what my research tells me, Tekken 8, City of the Wolves, Guilty Gear Strive, etc. don't contain any bonus modes within their arcade ladders, as they prefer to focus on their core gameplay loops. Mind you, I'm not claiming that these games don't have any bonus content, because of course they do, but the likes of Tekken Ball and episodes of Southtown don't fit my definition of bonus stages. At this point, I don't blame you if I've given the impression that bonus levels have been put down like Old Yeller, but when you start looking at other genres, a clear transformation starts to become noticeable. Instead of being thrust your way whether you like it or not, modern bonus stages usually take the form of optional unlockables that function as harsher challenges. Given the aforementioned hardware upgrades, developers can spend time fleshing out this content to their heart's content, taking bonus stages from under-a-minute distractions with little punishment to challenging gauntlets designed for only the most dedicated of players. As game design in general has evolved from keeping players satisfied one coin at a time to retaining large-scale player retention rates, this more significant type of quote-unquote bonus stage is now expected within almost all large-scale titles released during the past, I want to say 25 to 30 years? It kind of runs deep. There are a few ways they can leave their mark, so stay with me here. Mid-game content, post-game content, and long-term updates are how contemporary games keep players engaged, with each marking a shift from bonus content exclusively in the middle of a playthrough, like an old-school retro game, to now being after the credits have rolled, although there are still countless works with hidden bonus content during a playthrough. Almost all modern games I can think of feature meaningful post- and mid-game content, with various genres shining through. After finishing Super Mario Odyssey's campaign, you can explore Peach's Castle, Darkside Kingdom, and Darker Side Kingdom. Astrobot's Great Master Challenge also reps the 3D platformer space, with Celeste's B-side levels and Hollow Knight's Pantheons holding it down for the 2D crowd. Differing in style entirely is the action genre, as Bayonetta's Witch Trials and Devil May Cry's Bloody Palace act as addictive mid- and post-game content respectively. Bayonetta's combat encounters provide users with highly specific and often head-scratching combat requirements, whereas Devil May Cry throws a seemingly infinite number of foes your way and challenges you to stay alive for as long as possible. Metal Gear Rising and Ninja Gaiden Black also present mission modes with distinct objectives that are meant for the strongest of fighters, and I could keep going on within the action genre. Although I haven't played most of these next games yet, I've heard that Dragon's Dogma, Final Fantasy Stranger of Paradise, Chrono Trigger, and Earthbound all bring forth valuable mid- and post-game content that alter level design, side missions, NPC dialogue, etc., adding to their world-building elements. A highly underrated piece of post-game content that I love is Director's Cut mode in the House of the Dead Overkill. This adds more enemies, introduces more civilians to rescue, and extends levels by adding new areas, proving that even the lights-gone on-rail shooter genre has awesome bonus content. To recap, what we think of as retro game bonus stages has evolved into something much greater than early developers ever dreamed of, something potentially larger than the base game itself. And you know what the best part is? It's literally infinite. If a game performs well enough, well, there's nothing stopping its developer from releasing continuous updates over time. For example, I've been playing the Outlast Trials like crazy recently, and despite being on my 5th playthrough, I've barely scratched the surface. The constant slew of timed content means that there's always something extra for me to spend time with, even if it's just watching people play chess in the lobby. Other titles within the live service genre are almost exclusively known for their never-ending updates, even if some of them can be quite surreal looking. Content roadmaps are dime a dozen now in modern video games, with the notorious series of yet-to-be-announced DLC fighters being burnt into the brains of fighting game players. Outside of remasters and remakes of retro games, virtually all genres have mostly eliminated the classic style of bonus stage. It's no longer about keeping players engaged through short rushes of diverse gameplay formulas. Instead, we've now grown accustomed to the slow burn. So, what have we learnt today? Well, aside from flexing my skills of taking the most simple subject matter and turning it into a full video, I hope to have provided you with an explanation of why these classic levels have gone the way of the dodo. 10 to 20 years in the past may as well be eons ago in the technology sphere, as its frequent innovation often leads to aspects we take for granted being left to the wayside going forward. I've had this video topic in my head for a long time, yet I never thought it to be meaningful enough to dedicate time towards, but after playing some Super Street Fighter 4 and realizing that these bonus levels don't appear anymore, I knew I had to get all this off my chest. You may be gone, but you're still in our hearts, Diablo 2 Cal level. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you and your time, and I hope you had fun. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.